What's going on, everyone? My name's Zach Matook, and this is the Wicked Heavy Podcast. All right, episode 1, the intro episode. Thank you for all tuning in. As I mentioned, my name's Zach Matook, and you're listening to the Wicked Heavy Podcast. And in this episode, I just want to take the time to introduce myself, discuss what this podcast is even about, and explain to you all why I deeply love heavy music and why I want to make a podcast about it. So, again, my name is Zach. I'm from New England here in the States. I'm 34 years old, currently living in Rhode Island. And heavy music has been a part of my life ever since I even heard or started listening to music in general. And that is because my parents, and I think I was 4 years old, I asked them this and they can't really remember, but I know for a fact it was my first CD and that I got it before my first concert in 1995. So I think I was 4 years old in 1994 and they gave me Metallica's Black Album. Now, the story goes, my cousin Dean, one of my best friends, his parents, close, super tight with my parents, and they got him the Black Album. So I think in discussion with my parents, they thought, well, if they got that for Dean, I guess we should get Zach that too, because they hang out so much and they have something to listen to together. So we became like the Black Album dudes at a very young age. And all I knew about music was that music was Metallica. So I was very much influenced as early as I think you can be by heavy music. And I know people like the older Metallica albums more, but for me, that was my first album and it set me on the path that has led me here today. So all I listened to and all Dean listened to at the time was the Black Album. And then we started getting introduced, or at least I was, to, like Led Zeppelin, Boston, Journey. That's what my parents really liked, Van Halen. But also like Queensryche came into the fold and Dream Theater. So I was getting into a little more of the progressive metal at a very early age. And my first concert, Dean and his parents went to, and my parents, we were front row. It was 1995, and it was July, and at the Tweeter Center, which is now called Xfinity Center in Mansfield, Mass, we were front row for Queensryche, which, I do remember a lot of it in a way, but I was super young, right? But I know we were front row because I do remember getting a stick at the end from like the stage hands and stuff, which was just super cool. But yeah, my first show was 5 years old and it was Queensryche Promised Land Tour, which is pretty crazy. And Typo Negative opened, which I didn't even know. I didn't know them at the time. Again, 5, getting introduced to music, learning how to live, I guess. And yeah, saw Typo Negative and Queensryche, which was pretty crazy. After that era, then I heard a band called Korn, and my life completely changed. Everything I knew about music completely changed, and it was like Blind and Twist. I remember specifically just was like I just couldn't understand what I was hearing, but I loved everything about it, and it was the only thing that mattered to me at the time, right? So my life was Korn, Metallica, or my musical life was Korn, Metallica, Queensryche, and Dream Theater. So a little bit of a spread, but it definitely shaped everything else that was to come for me. So super heavy music, but also more of like the progressive metal side of things with Queensryche and of course Dream Theater. But yeah, Korn. I only wanted to wear Korn shirts. I had Jinko jeans. I had a ball chain necklace. I had this weird little like coloring stuff that I'd put in my front flip of my hair. And I was that kid with the Walkman at school. My aunt's stepson, Chris, he made me a tape of all Korn. And it was all their different hits. And that's all I wanted to listen to. That's all that mattered to me, right? So, yeah, I was really into Korn. And it put me down the new metal path and Disturbed and Limp Bizkit. I mean, that was it. That was everything back then. And I didn't hate it. I really did love it, and I'm actually going to see Korn in September. I still love them dearly. Actually, the first time I saw them was on the Pop Sucks tour with Trust Company and Disturbed. So yeah, super crazy, and that whole set's actually on YouTube, which is unreal. It's like 22 years ago. But yeah, Korn really was like the heavy music foundation for me. And then as I got into middle school and high school, then bands like Bring Me the Horizon, Kill Switch Engage, Unearth, The Devil Wears Prada, Under Oath, those that became my identity. All my friends also listened to that music, and like kind of everything we did and everything we talked about revolved around that heavy music and it being such a big part of our kind of our day-to-day identities, right? So a lot of times when we hung out, and these are my friends like Dean, of course, and then I met Sam, Billy, Lex. We would just hang out and listen to like breakdowns in a parking lot while we like longboarded or skated or rode bikes. That was what we did, and that was like pure fun to me. The standout band, though, in terms of all those core memories at the time, some of you might know the band Elijah out from California. That album Masochist, that became like how parts of their songs. I didn't even know what they were saying with some of the lyrics, but I would take some of them, and Sam and I especially would like adapt them into our own language. But yeah, like it's just like that whole scene of metalcore, Remo. I have a meeting apparently. Forgive that sound. That became everything, right? And it's how we had fun, and it was just who we were. So throughout high school, going a ton of shows locally, bands like Vanna, Therefore I Am, On Broken Wings, Black My Heart, and I was in a couple bands too. But those bands just we always knew there would be a show that weekend coming up, whether it was in Norwood at the ICC or what have you, Tiger's Den, etc. in Brockton. But there was always a show to go to, and it was an awesome scene to be involved in, and it was very shaping for all of us, but I know especially for me. And I knew early on, I was like, man, it would be so cool if one day I get to like work in the music industry or like with these bands. So heavy music is with me throughout college. I meet more friends at college who also shared a love for it. My friend Mark, I remember I was blasting Bring Me the Horizon, A Day to Remember in my dorm, and he just popped in. I haven't met him yet. He's like, "You like this kind of stuff too?" Boom, best friends at college, right? So it was really it was connecting me with other people with a passion as well, and I'm thankful for what heavy music has brought me. So post college, I landed a job with SJC Custom Drums. Now, I have always loved their drums as a drummer myself. I had picked it up in middle school. My dad had showed me some drum beats, and I remember I figured out how to play on my own. One day I played Green Day When I Come Around without any assistance. I just figured it out. I couldn't believe it. I was on cloud nine. I ran upstairs like, oh my God, I could play drums, parents. Like, how cool is that? Bless them for putting up with me basically playing drums every day throughout the rest of middle school and into high school after I found this new passion. But in that time, discovering SJC drums through Bring Me the Horizon, as Matt Nichols at the time had a crazy clear acrylic kit with green splatter. And I thought it was the coolest thing I had ever seen in my life because I had no idea you could do that with drums. So after I had graduated and had my first gig as I was working in marketing for a tech startup, I wanted something that was a little more me, and I saw an opening for sales rep at SJC Drums, and I went for it. I knew I had what they needed based on the job description and what they were looking for. I had the interview, and yeah, I got in. So, Mike, SJC, founder, thank you so much for giving me that chance. And over the next 5 years, so this is about 2016 to 2021, I worked for SJC Drums mainly as like their brand manager, but also as the artist relations rep and specifically like the heavy guy at SJC. So I was working with all of the heavier bands. I mean, Jared Fit for a King, Goose, now in Better Lovers at the time was in Norma Jean, and then Every Time I Die. I've got Alex from Silent Planet. Josh, he was in Amure when I had him come on board. Now he's drumming for Chelsea Grin and the founder or like the brain behind Darko. So I was in it and I was having the best time because I was hanging out with and yeah, I was hanging out with and getting to know all of my favorite bands when I was growing up. It was kind of wild. And I never thought I'd meet them, let alone become friends with a lot of these people, right? So I had a dream gig at the time, and I loved every minute of it. And I'm still connected with people at SJC and a lot of the artists who I do plan on having on this podcast to talk about their heavy music journey. But yeah, I did that for 5 years, had an amazing time, went all over the States, going to a lot of the metal festivals like Louder Than Life, meeting other bands that weren't necessarily playing SJC, but you have access to backstage. So I'm just talking to everyone and just having a truly like amazing time. And like I had said, I thought one day I'd have a gig in the music industry, and I made it happen as a kid living in Stoughton, Mass at the time. Um, Getting to travel out to California, go to festivals, work with events with Vans, Warp Tour, all those festivals, and it was just the best. So fast forward to today, heavy music is still very much a part of my life. All these memories behind me, um, good times were had, but my journey with heavy music is not over. And that's why I wanted to make this podcast. I want to talk to friends, artists, just people that also have a passion for heavy music like me to learn about all the other music out there that maybe I don't even know about. For example, I met a friend, Evan, through mountain biking, and a hobby of mine, and he introduced me to more of the brutal death metal side of heavy music. Now, I had always known bands like Fetus and Cannibal Corpse existed, and Nile, etc., but I never really like gave them a chance because it wasn't, I'm currently, for example, like Kublai Khan, Knock Loose, After the Burial, like those are my big three go to like wicked heavy bands when I'm looking for heavy music. But I didn't really ever give that like brutal death metal side of music a chance, but I'm glad I did because it put me down a whole new path of heavy that I love. And Evan's like a purist, as I like to call him. He doesn't want anything electronic, no overproduction with his brutal music or his metal. Like so, Fetus for me became like I'll say like a top 10 heavy band because we saw them 3 times in 1 year after that, and the band just truly blows my mind. I love Fetus, right? So thank you, Evan, for showing me a whole different side of heavy music that I didn't explore, and you really like kind of opened up my brutal encyclopedia in a way, and showed me some cool stuff. But that's what I want to do with this podcast. I want to talk to other people, hear what bands they think people should know about that maybe don't, that are heavy. I want to know what the heaviest show they ever went to was, their first heavy album, what they think is maybe the heaviest album ever to them. The heaviest breakdowns, etc. These are conversations I like to have with my friends, so I want to open it up to other people who want to have the conversation as well. So that is the plan with the podcast. I do have the first guest and artist lined up for next week. So hopefully by the time you hear this, maybe it's out or it will be out very soon after. I'm not going to say who it is because I got to keep you on your toes and keep you wanting more, right? But again, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, my name is Zach Matook, and this has been the Wicked Heavy Podcast.